Let's preview the Jets Sunday right here on this station with Brian Costello, Jets beat reporter from the New York Post. I like the detail in his Twitter headline, the added sentence of, I don't write the headlines. And, of course, they always go right to the New York papers for the best recaps in sports. Good morning, Brian. How are you?
I'm good, guys. How you doing?
Doing pretty well. What is the headline that you did not come up with that you caught like the most grief for?
There's been a million of them. You know, the New York Post headlines, particularly on our website, they can be rough sometimes. And, you know, people ask me sometimes when they come to New York, well, what's different about New York than playing other places? And, you know, if you throw 3 interceptions in Jacksonville, you're going to get criticized the same way you're going to get criticized in New York. But in New York, if you go out to dinner with, you know, some actress, it's going to be in the newspaper and it's going to be on the New York Post website. And that's the kind of stuff that usually gets people annoyed, is the stuff about their personal life. But in New York, you can't really hide like you can in other cities.
So is the headline right? We're always searching for ways to do less work and find better, easier jobs. Is the headline writer's job like their only job? Is there one person for all the news stories, or do they have to do a lot of other stuff?
There's all editors come up with the headlines, and there's a whole group of them, and they proofread the stories, they lay them out in the newspaper, they do the photos, and now with the website, there's a whole different group of people that do the website as well. So now it's a lot of different people.
I'm calling this the Culture Bowl on Sunday because the C word defined Brian Schottenheimer's offseason, and Aaron Glenn was Mr. Culture, starting off with the 0-4 start there with the Jets. Brian, are there legitimate signs of some type of culture turnaround, or it feels like the same old mess?
Look, you know, he's brought a different approach. He's been stricter in the offseason. That, you know, he's talked a good game so far, I'd say, but like, you need to see results at some point. And I'm not saying at 0-4 anyone's you should be panicking, but he does need to see more results on the field soon. The problem for Aaron Glenn right now is it's not just 0-4. It's been a bad 0-4 in terms of penalties and turnovers and dumb mistakes, which has kind of been the hallmark of Jets football for a long time. So I think fans would be okay if they were losing close games and playing really well and just being outclassed by the Bills and the Buccaneers and the Steelers, but it's been ugly. And Monday night they played another 0-3 team in Miami. They turn the ball over 3 times. They have 13 penalties. They fair catch a punt at the 2-yard line. You know, just it's been dumb football. And so I think that's what Aaron Glenn has to fix right now for people to truly feel good about his culture.
Well, it's not just culture, Brian, but like you've got the defensive aspect for Aaron Glenn, where it's like he's brought in here as, you know, here's one of these bright defensive coordinators who's going to be a great communicator. And the defense has struggled a lot, it looks like, for the Jets this season compared to recent years. Is there panic on that front? I mean, if everybody feels good about the culture, is there panic about like what's wrong with this defense? Why isn't this working under Aaron Glenn yet?
There is. It's not so much about Aaron Glenn, though. Like, just to understand, like, the Jets were clear hiring him. Hiring him was not about his defense, right? This wasn't like Chicago hiring Ben Johnson because he's this amazing X's and O's guy on offense. Hiring Aaron Glenn was to hire a leader, was to hire this guy that was going to clean up the mess and what you guys talked about, the culture, change the culture, change that. The Jets have been down the road where they hired a great defensive coordinator like Robert Saleh. They hired Todd Bowles when he was the hot defensive coordinator. They made it clear when they were making this hire, they were not out to hire the best coordinator. They were looking for a leader. And Aaron Glenn came in and he handed the defense to Steve Wilks, a veteran coach. He hired him. And Aaron Glenn, you know, I wouldn't say he's hands off. He's involved with it, but it's Steve Wilks is calling the defense. So I don't think people are so much pointing the finger at Aaron Glenn with the defense, but yeah, it's been bad. And Steve Wilks is now, people are starting to look at him and going, did they hire the right guy there? Because they're giving up 30 points a game right now.
Brian Costello, New York Post, joining us here, 105.3 The Fan. How is he in game? Is he a go for it on 4th down like as Dan Campbell was when he was in Detroit? Is he like a very aggressive? How is he in game?
Yeah, he's been a mix. You know, there's been some 4th downs where he's punted where I thought he'd go for it. And like, if you're looking at Dan Campbell would go for it, right? He's still, you know, Aaron Glenn, like we just talked about, he is a defensive coach, and defensive coaches tend to be a little different in that regard, in my experience, than the offensive coaches. So So there are times when you're like, okay, 4th and 6 in midfield, is he going to go for any punts? And he hasn't been totally aggressive so far. But he's also, it's not like he's completely old school either. He is going for it on some 4th downs. Their play calling hasn't been particularly good on the 4th and shorts, and that's been a problem. But he so far it's kind of been a mixed bag with him in that regard.
Is the quarterback for next year on the roster right now?
I'd say no. I think Justin Fields will be here next year. They gave him a 2-year contract. They gave him $30 million guaranteed, so I think he'll be here. But my gut is they're going to draft a quarterback, and there's going to be a quote-unquote competition next summer. We know how that goes, and maybe Justin Fields starts the first 3 games, and then the quarterback comes in the 4th game, like we're seeing with the Giants right now. One of those situations. So, but I think Justin Fields will probably be here. He might start the season next year. I don't think he's the long-term answer, though, at quarterback.
How has Fields been playing?
Very up and down. It's really, he played really well against the Steelers, both throwing the ball, running the ball was impressive. He did nothing against the Bills. Like he couldn't hit the side of a building that day. And then he got a concussion at the end of the game, so he didn't play week 3 against the Bucs. And then in Miami, he really didn't do much for the first 2-3 quarters. And then he had a really nice 43-yard highlight run for a touchdown. And he moved them pretty well in the 4th quarter. The hard part to tell right now is, are these defenses kind of taking their foot off the gas late in the game, and the Jets are taking advantage of that. But he's made some nice throws. It's just not consistent right now.
Brian Costello, New York Post, joining us on the D&M Leasing Hotline to preview the Cowboys on 105.3 The Fan. How are you looking at the Cowboys as a matchup, Brian? Are you looking at it as like a coin toss, very gettable? Do you think the spread is not big enough? How are you looking at matching up specifically with Dallas?
Yeah, I thought the spread wasn't big enough. I thought Dallas probably deserved to be favored by more. I think they're similar teams right now in terms of both defenses aren't playing well. They both have new coordinators. It seems like things are, there's an adjustment period going on. The offenses have been better. I think Dallas's offense is better. To me, the difference in this game is Dak, right? Dallas has a quarterback playing extremely well. The Jets have a quarterback who's been okay. So I think, with bad defenses, if this game ends up being a shootout, the Jets can't hang with the Cowboys in a shootout game. So I think most people view this as a very tough game for the Jets. There's this history. If you guys remember, this isn't a very significant game for the Cowboys, but for the Jets, in 2019, they started 0-4 with Adam Gase as coach, and they beat the Cowboys at MetLife Stadium in the 5th game. Sam Darnold had a long pass to Robbie Anderson and Jamal Adams. They played at the end of the game, and they beat the Cowboys. So that was Gase's first win that season. So I think the Jets fans are kind of looking at that and going, well, maybe that happens again. But I think it's going to be tough for this Jets defense is kind of reeling right now. I'm not sure if they can get their feet under them against the Cowboys offense.
Brian, Sauce Gardner said he thinks he is being targeted for penalties because the Jets aren't playing well. How much stock do you put into that?
I don't know. I mean, remember we had this whole discussion last year with the Chiefs, like were they getting all the calls? Remember that going to the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
And so I think it does happen to a degree. With Sauce, I think it's more he does grab. He's a grabby player, and I think he got away with it his rookie year. And then I think people probably pointed it out to the league, and the league has called him tougher the last couple of years. And he does grab. And I just don't think he gets away with much. So he's got to fix that. So to me, I don't think it's Sauce. I think if you guys watched the Dolphins game Monday night,
yep.
There were some calls against the Jets that were tough, and some non-calls were tough. So like Garrett Wilson gets called for pass interference when he shouldn't have. It was like he touched the guy. He didn't really push him on the touchdown. And then Justin Fields gets drilled out of bounds, and there's no call. Like most quarterbacks, you get that call. He doesn't get that. And then the 2-minute warning there, the tight end caught the ball, Jeremy Ruckert. He goes down, and like a good 10 seconds after the whistle, a guy hits him, and there's no call. And it's like stuff like that. I don't know. Aaron Glenn said, we've got to earn those calls, which I think is a good way to approach it. But I just think the Jets are not when you watch these games, there are some calls the Jets just don't get.
Brian Costello, New York Post here on the Fan. Are Sauce and Garrett Wilson both playing up to the hype in the contract? Which one has been the better player between the two, and have they both been playing really, really well?
Garrett Wilson's been playing outstanding. Like, he's played better than I've ever seen him play. And the amazing thing about the way Garrett has played is, I would challenge you guys who follow football closely, who's the Jets' number 2 receiver?
Braylon Edwards.
Robbie Anderson.
Alan Lazard.
Alan Lazard's a good one. He's not quite number 2. He is on the team. But, yeah, they don't have a number 2 receiver, right? So Garrett Wilson has 27 catches right now. The next wide receiver who has the most catches has 4.
Dang!
So if I'm Matt Eberflus, right? I'm sure he's getting plenty of calls about Matt Eberflus right now.
Yeah, you don't want to be that.
I'm sitting there on Tuesday going, okay, how am I going to attack his offense? It's like, okay, we got to stop Garrett Wilson. Like, and every defense coordinator is saying that. They just haven't done it. He's had 80 yards in 3 games. He scored touchdowns in 3 of the 4 games. He's playing very, very well right now, and it's impressive because he doesn't have much around him. And so he's been good. Sauce has been up and down. He had a really good game week 1. He matched up against DK Metcalf. He gave up a touchdown on Monday night to Darren Waller, and he's had the penalties. So I wouldn't say he's lived up to the billing of the being paid like the number 1 cornerback in the NFL so far. But Garrett's been outstanding.
Brian, the Cowboys have had some trouble rushing the passer. They used to have one. They traded him, though, about a month ago.
I heard something about that.
Yeah, it was kind of a big deal. What is the Jets' offensive line like? I know it's a high pedigree offensive line. They spent some higher draft capital on it. They went and signed Josh Myers, who was a second-round pick a few years back. What has the Jets' offensive line been like, particularly in pass protection?
They've been pretty good. They've been good. They have Armand Membu is at right tackle, who was their first-round pick this year, and Olu Fashanu is the left tackle, who was their first-round pick last year. So they've got some. Like you said, they've spent some picks on them, and they've been good in pass protection. Joey Bosa had some success against them when they played the Bills, but really T.J. Watt didn't do much for Pittsburgh. Now the Buccaneers blitzed the crap out of the Jets, and they struggled with the blitzes. They really did. So I think if you're looking at that and you want to take that, that was a Todd Bowles defense, which is known for blitzing. People could take something from that and do that, but overall they've been very good. The problem is, Justin Fields holds onto the ball longer than anyone in the NFL. His time to throw is the longest in the NFL. So that's where they get into some trouble. I don't necessarily think it's the pass protection, but he's got to get rid of the ball quicker. But so far, I think the right tackle is a rookie. He's been very, very good.
Brian Costello from the New York Post joining us here on 105.3 The Fan. Okay, Brian, so your first year covering the Jets was the 2011 season?
Correct.
What do you remember about Brian Schottenheimer and your impressions of him that final season there with the Jets?
He was on the hot seat basically the whole year, and it was that was the first season the Jets didn't go to the playoffs under Rex Ryan. They'd been to 2 championship games, and then things kind of fell apart that season. They sort of put more on Mark Sanchez's plate. And it didn't work. They wanted to throw the ball more, and they brought in Plaxico Burress and Derek Mason, and they let Jericho Cotchery go, and it just all fell apart. And he was the guy who was taking the blame. And they played a game on Christmas Eve against the Giants, which is famously remembered up here for Victor Cruz scoring a 99-yard touchdown. But for the Jets, they ended up dropping back like 62 times, something like that. And it was like, you knew Schottenheimer was done after that. And so then he was the one who got fired at the end of that season. And I saw Shotty at the league meetings in March, and I told them, I really owe you an apology. I was like, because I hammered him like everybody else that year. And since then, no Jets offensive coordinator has lasted more than 2 years. They've been through so many different offensive coordinators since Shotty left, and I was like, we didn't realize he was doing a pretty good job because they had a young quarterback, and they got to the 2 AFC Championship games, and he had a coach in Rex Ryan who was defensive minded and just wanted him to run the ball and never throw. And it's been one bad offensive coordinator after another since Schotty left. So, he's a very good guy. He was a good guy to cover. He never took anything personally. So I was happy when I heard he was getting a shot with Dallas, and I'm curious to see how it goes.
Yeah, I think that was going to be my next question. When you heard the news that Brian Schottenheimer was hired here in Dallas, was that something that when you heard it, you thought, all right, he's going to have success there, or do you think there's still going to be some challenges there? How do you basically anticipate this Schottenheimer era playing out now that you've covered him for that year before?
Yeah, I was shocked, right? Like most people, I was shocked because it's when Schotty was with the Jets, he was a name that was thrown out as a head coaching candidate. I think he almost got the Bills job at one point. And so I was surprised, but I think he's a good coach, and I think he knows. He learned a lot from his father, obviously, but there's so many things that go into this. Like I've been through so many Jets coaches now. It's very hard to predict success for these coaches. I thought Robert Saleh was a really good coach, and it just didn't work. And so, I knew that Micah's situation was brewing, and that was a tough one for him to navigate. So I'm not sure, how much success he'll have, because there's so many variables that go into this. But I do think he's a good coach, and I think he'll be a popular guy with the players. I do think he'll hold them accountable. He's got some old school to him because of his dad, and he did come up in that era, and he's been around a while. But I also think he's smart enough to adapt to some of the newer stuff.
Brian, did you put together trade packages that would have worked for Quinnen Williams and Micah Parsons after Jerry said he spoke with New York?
No, that was after the fact he said that. But no, there's no way the Jets were trading Quinnen Williams. And when the Micah stuff really started percolating, my boss, of course, was like, "Are the Jets going to be in on him?" And there was no way the Jets could do that. They just paid Sauce Gardner. They just paid Garrett Wilson. Like that was a lot of guaranteed money going to them. So there was no way they were going to be able to give Micah the contract he was looking for. And I think the Jets really like Quinnen Williams. As good as Micah is, I don't think they were doing that. And they used first round picks on edge rushers in 2022 and 2023. So they have some guys there that are not as good as Micah, but that they like and are developing. So I didn't think that was going to really happen.
Would you rather have Woody Johnson or Jerry Jones running your football team or owning it?
Oh boy, let's see. That's a tough one. I think I'm going to plead the fifth on that one.
Man, hang on. Who was the? Hang on.
It was your colleague, Paul Schwartz.
Paul Schwartz. You New Yorkers are supposed to have the biggest stones of anyone. Schwartz dodged the question when I asked him about Mara, and now you're dodging. What are you guys going soft there? What are you doing, Brian?
Well, I don't think there's a good answer there.
They think we're controlled by Jerry.
Yeah, I know, right?
They think we're controlled by the owner. You guys want to answer for either owner?
Can I say neither?
No. All right. You can come on. Get the editor on to give us the headline and the selection. Hey, man, fantastic preview. Thank you so much. Enjoy the game and the rest of the season.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.
Brian Costello, New York Post.